Yo, goons, what's good? Today I've got an interesting video for you. So, it makes me mauled out of my mind when I watch a lot of other Goldlewis players and see how often things are done super suboptimally. Because I think what's happening a lot of the time is that like we're being complacent, that our character's pressure is extremely strong and its damage is extremely high, and we're using that fact to not optimize the damage and setups and tech that we could be with this character. And that's a big mistake on Goldlewis, in my opinion, because he heavily rewards optimal routing in combos and good tech usage, because he has an insane amount of tech and a lot of different ways he can route his combos. And so today I figured I would basically lay out a workflow for my Goldlewis players here, for all of you to learn things in order to optimize. I made like an optimization ladder that I'm going to talk about, so things that you should be doing in your game plan. I'd say go up this ladder from the bottom to the top. So that being said, let's go ahead and get started. So the first thing that I would say every Goldlewis should be doing in order to optimize their game plan, and that is absolutely essential to the optimal Goldlewis game plan, no matter what, no debate, is car canceling or dash canceling. And that's basically when we use a dash cancelable normal like close slash or 5k. And in those initial frames of the dash, we do our Behemoth Typhoon, and that allows us rather to get a little bit extra distance compared to if we don't. Not only that, but it can create like artificial gaps in pressure or remove gaps in pressure as a result of the extra couple of frames we have moving forward during the car cancel. And it's very important with Goldlewis to stay in all the time. Stay in as much as we can, be in their face with our pressure. Now I have a full video going over car canceling, but I'll give a little TLDR here. Basically the trick is to make sure you're buffering your Behemoth Typhoon. It's like you don't have to dash and then do your entire Behemoth motion. Like you can see me doing my Behemoth motion oftentimes before I even start dashing, before I hit the dash macro. And that's really the trick to doing it. And I'd say you definitely want to practice so that you're comfortable doing all of these. A good Goldlewis player, an optimal Goldlewis player, or even close to optimal should never be dropping these, or extremely rarely. It can happen once in a blue moon if you've been really fatigued playing the game. But yeah, car canceling, absolutely the way to start in terms of optimizing Goldlewis. If you want to learn more about it, please check out my other videos on it. So the next way I would optimize Goldlewis would be in terms of his mix-ups. And really, a lot of Goldlewises kind of do extremely basic mix-ups. Like, we'll just kind of get in there, do our pressure string, and then, RC forward after 684, and go for the high-low 842, 862. Now, this isn't necessarily a bad mix-up per se, but again, this is about optimizing Goldlewis. This is about, being able to open up the best players in the world. How do I open up Nubenheimer when I fight Nubenheimer? Like a player that can react to every 842 and every 862 unless you mental stack them like crazy. That's really what we're talking about today. And I would say, even though we're going to go more in depth on some of these things later, where you want to start with optimizing your mix-ups is with fast RC, because this on its own is a big improvement over that slow RC mix-up, because the 842 is like effectively 28 frame startup. It's very easy to react to, actually. Like anyone who's remotely trained against Goldlewis will react to this pretty much every single time. In this situation, it still gets people a lot because he's a scary character. And of course, 862 is hard to react to. But what's even harder to react to is fast RC 862. And not only that, but you want to make sure that you're playing the strike throw game effectively with Goldlewis. Because even though it's a relatively, easy layer to insert into your game plan, just strike throw, it's very, very important to represent effectively, because guard cancel throw is not the same as regular strike throw. Let me explain that. So the way guard cancel works in this game, one of the many disgusting qualities of it is that it removes your throw protection. Normally, if you block a normal, no matter how plus that normal is, whatever, you have 5 frames of throw protection. 5 frames of throw protection, right? So you cannot be thrown for 5 frames. However, Guard Crush removes this, and we're also plus, which means that we can grab the opponent before they can even press a button. while they're guard crush. And it means basically that we can disable opponents from fuzzy jumping and fuzzy throwing, because in other words, it makes the strike and the throw options hit on effectively the same frame because of guard cancel, right? And so you really need to be representing this properly. I cannot stress enough how many Goldlewises I see not playing the strike throw game properly, and just being able to actually read your opponent and put pressure on them using the strike throw game, weighing the risk reward of when to strike, when to throw. Those are all relatively advanced things that come with time, but I'm just saying part of optimizing your mix-up plan is going to be making sure you're using this effectively. And it goes hand in hand with the fast RC, because like you're right in their face a lot of the time here, you know, after these fast RCs. And because, you know, 842 for example is so plus, you know, most of the time that's going to be a non-mashable tick throw opportunity. And so I would highly recommend implementing those into your game. Now there are of course many other ways to mix up the opponent. Again, I have a separate video, a full guide on it, but let's just talk about one really quickly here that I think is commonly misunderstood by Goldlewises maybe, in terms of how good it is and when we can actually go for it. And I'm talking about the fuzzy overhead. So if you do a behemoth that forces the opponent to stand, let's set Kai to crouch here just to demonstrate what I'm talking about. You can PRC forward and you get this instant overhead JKJD. And basically the opponent, if they're down backing there, they will get hit even though they're standing. They're stuck standing because of guard crush. It's the way that guard crush works. And the first thing that a lot of us do suboptimally here is actually the combo route itself. Let me show you what you should be doing. So if you land the JKJD, almost every single time, if you're close to the opponent, you can do this route. And that route is quite rewarding off a fuzzy overhead, especially considering the fact that a lot of the time when you're going for this, the opponent has some risk built up. And more than that, the opponent often has some wall damage built up because you'll be going for this in the corner. And the nice thing about this string is that it actually slumps the opponent if any of the hits splat except for the final hit. 684. Not only that, but you can also pretty much always guarantee a wall break even if you had no wall damage, as long as you landed that string close to the corner. So, you know, stop doing this route. Stop doing this kind of thing. You know, this isn't necessarily bad on hit, but like, first off, it's very clunky. It doesn't even work half the time. And also, if the opponent blocks, it'll just get messed up and your frame advantage will just be gone. But second off, it's really easy to react and you know, adjust your pressure if you go for this route, because you put a close slash in here, right? You do a close slash in here. You literally have that entire JK, JD, and close slash to react to if you got the fuzzy hit or not. And if you didn't, you have a close slash on their block. You're still in there. You're pressuring them, and that goes back to the first rung on the ladder, which is to make sure you're doing card canceling, make sure you're pressuring properly. Okay. Now the other thing I wanted to explain about the fuzzy is that what's commonly misunderstood is that we need to do 862 or 486 to force the opponent to stand and then go for the fuzzy. Now technically, that will guarantee that we can go for the fuzzy because the opponent had to block those BTs standing. But what we don't commonly understand is that any BT, as long as the opponent was standing when they were hit, allows us to go for that fuzzy because they're stuck standing during guard crush. That's the whole idea of why the 862 and 486 fuzzies work, right? They are stuck standing during that. They can't crouch no matter what, regardless of if they blocked a mid or not. And, you know, if you're doing your pressure properly, the opponent is going to be standing a lot of the time because you should be inserting 2K 2D frame traps here and there. You know, you should be inserting 842s here and there, 248s here and there, etc. Oftentimes this situation pops up. A lot of the time pops up. People just stand block past certain ranges, you know. Like if they're at this range, they don't think there's any threat for a low. Oftentimes they're stand blocking. And that's when you can go for a fuzzy again, right? Now just note that your frame advantage and the distances you can do this from kind of depends on the BT you hit the opponent with. If you hit them with a 426, you have a ton of time to run up and do this because it's obviously plus 16. And then it really becomes a timing mix-up for the opponent because, you know, you have so long to go for it. You can literally kind of just run in their face for a little bit before threatening this, like this kind of thing, right? I also wanted to say the low option here. If you want to make this setup completely unfuzzyable, the low option is going to be 248, the most rewarding low option at least. So you kind of just, you know, you do this and you run up and you run in their face and you 248 instead of JK. The difference between those two options is like 2-ish frames. So it is basically impossible to fuzzy. And not only that, the opponent is usually not expecting to block a fuzzy overhead after blocking a mid behemoth, you know, after blocking 684, your pressure ender. So definitely be using those fuzzies as well, not just the 862 and 486 fuzzies. Okay? So let's move on. So the next thing, and I don't want to come off as ranting here, even though I probably am. The next thing that absolutely makes my skin crawl about watching other Goldlewis players is their counter hit conversions. Guys, our counter hit conversions are phenomenal. And I think the problem here is that we're buffering too often after far slash. What we're doing is throwing out far slash and buffering 684 every time. Not what you should be doing. Because you can do a gapless far slash 684 pretty much on reaction to the opponent's block. Like, you don't need to fully send it. And what making that change allows you to do is react to your counter hits a little better. Not only that, but you can also kind of overwrite your inputs a little bit. Like, you see I inputted 684 to start there and then 486. And 486 came out, right? And if you're fast enough with that, you can get conversions, right? So I don't want to be seeing you guys doing this combo anymore. That's, don't do that. Do something like this instead. Look how much more we got off that. 179, and they're closer to the corner, etc. It's so much better. Now, this extends to the corner as well. I don't ever want to be seeing this. I don't want to see it anymore, y'all, because look what you're missing out on. Like, you're getting 88 damage compared to this. $88 damage compared to that. The price of being suboptimal with this character is actually substantial because of how much he gets, particularly on counter hit. Just note that that one's a little distance dependent. Like, if you're really far, sometimes that won't combo, as you can see. Same kind of thing with 2S. I also want to talk a little bit about combo theory here, especially in the corner. So this is kind of an intricate topic, but the baseline is that you want to get your 426 wall bounce on counter hits as early as possible, with as few hits as possible, because that way you avoid any possibility of the opponent splatting prematurely. And where this pops up in particular is off of 268. So here's a route that we can do that really showcases this. Now, not only is that a ton more damage than the traditional routing, but let's say you try to keep it simple and you go for something like this route. Now, the problem here is that even though there's only in air quotes here, because with risk this can make a huge difference, there's only a 13 damage difference here. The main problem is the amount of damage we're doing to the wall. If you splat on that close slash or that 5H, which you will a lot of the time if you're getting a counter hit with 268, you're going to be losing out on a lot of damage, especially, you know, because those pop the opponent up. A lot of the time it'll put them too high to get the clean hit on your 1080. By the way, quick little side note, if you don't know how to do running 1080, it's very, very simple. Basically, at the end of your 1080, you just hold forward, tap dash, and then press P. And you'll get a feel for how long you have to do this. You actually have quite a while. See? You can see the difference in time there between when I dash and when I press P. Like, the buffer gets held for a while. So, you know, make sure that you're actually running up and getting that. Now, that also brings me to knowing when you can actually go for a 1080, because depending on what you splatted with, you can't always. Generally, if you splatted with a 624 or a 684, unless it's very low proration, particularly, you know, if it's just like one hit or two hits, you're really not going to be able to go for 1080 unless it's those instances. And a lot of the time you do end combos, you know, especially if you're carrying the opponent to the corner, 684 or 624 and whatnot. But, you know, just know in those situations, you probably won't be able to get 1080. And in order to super break, you'll have to do just 1 churn. 2 churns is optimal because it adds very little startup compared to the payoff you get. But that's actually quite hard to do intentionally. And even then, it doesn't always work. So just thought I'd throw that in there. Let's also talk about air conversions, particularly on counter hit. This makes my skin crawl. Makes my skin crawl when I just see counter hit JS into nothing. Okay, here's the route that we should be doing. Everyone take note of this. Please start doing it, please. Because this situation pops up all the time with drone. All the time. Look how much you can get off of a counter hit 2S. Again, the cost for being suboptimal is substantial. Like, absolutely substantial if you're just doing this. It's basically the same as on the ground, what I was showing a minute ago. Right? Just air dash in and 862. I promise that's the way. Pick up with close slash. At most spacings, that will work. Even if it doesn't, just 2K and keep your Oki. Like, it's still better. That was the meatiest 268 in my life. Oh my god. But yeah, fellas, that's going to be the route. 90% of the time you can get a close slash pickup there. You just have to be fast on that so they don't, end up on the ground. Start doing it. Start doing it. Speaking of which, let's also talk about your counter hit conversions on the ground if you land an aerial. Particularly counter hit JD. I don't want to see this. I don't want to see that anymore. This is what I want to see instead. That's what I want to see, fellas. Okay? If you're close enough. If you're not, you just air dash in with another JD. Is what I like to do. You can also just air dash in with a behemoth if you're far enough. That works. You can get good Oki as well. But yeah. Counter hit aerials are like one of the biggest things that make me mauled, As opposed to something like this, Not too different, but Oki diff. And also the possibility of slumping the opponent. Yeah. Please stop. Please stop being suboptimal here. I beg you. We get so much more. Also, sometimes I'll notice Goldlewis's will accidentally misinput 5H sometimes. It happens to everyone. And they'll find a counter hit and they just don't know how to combo off of it. Generally, if you get like a fat 5H, 486 is going to be your best friend. You're not going to get a ton off of that, but I just figured I'd throw this in there because I do often see surprise 5H happen and people not confirming off of it. Anyway, yeah, that's what you want to do. Let's also look at optimized basic confirms. Something like this. Basically going to be the same philosophy as before. Try to get your 426 as early as possible, particularly if you're doing an RC confirm. Because look what happens if I just go for something very basic. First off, fast RC for meter efficiency is better. But second off, your routing can get messed up. That's what happened there. And also it's just going to be less damage. There's the risk of the opponent getting splatted. It's just better to try to do your 426 as early as possible. Okay? Alright. Let's also talk about gun combos for a second. So gun combos are often optimal damage, particularly if the opponent has guts, if they're below half HP. But you really need to weigh in whether or not they're worth going for in light of wall damage, because gun adds a lot of wall damage. But where you find this pop up from time to time is sometimes you'll get pickups like this, or just a raw 268 pickup. Technically, gun combos are going to net you more damage in those situations. Especially if the opponent has a lot of risk, again, because gun itself doesn't add much scaling. So cashing out with super is really good with it. Generally, though, you want to go for gun if you get a low wall damage scenario and a really good starter. Now, oftentimes as well, it's just optimal to alter your routes. Even if you get something as simple as this, going for a gun route is often going to be better than going for the other route that I was saying. Even just altering your confirms is going to be better if the opponent's low. You're going to have a better chance of killing them. But the trade-off with this is that you should only do it if you're sure it's going to kill them. Okay? Because it builds them a lot of burst. Or if you really need the round back and they're going to get burst back anyway. that's another reason for going for gun combos. I also see Goldlewis is not confirm off counter hit 6H every time they could. So I figured I would show like how to do that properly from certain distances. You know, you can actually convert off of counter hit 6H from further than you would think. Now, if you're on like the opposite side like this, red RC is going to be the only way to go here. Keep that in mind. Like if you're really fast on your reactions, maybe you can get something else. Like maybe you can just get a 684. But, you know, most of the time that is not going to be feasible. Like even if he's all the way over here, if I just hit him with a 6H, believe it or not, I probably, yeah, have time to just run up and 426 his ass from there. That brings me to my next point actually. Catching with 2H 486 is often going to be better. So sometimes this pops up on the optimal, like normal 426 hit combo. Let me show that real quick. So obviously I was way too far to do close slash 248 there. It's obvious that wouldn't have worked. But if I alter my conversion appropriately using 2H, I get a lot more damage than like 5k 624. You know, that's very suboptimal in newbie stuff. So yeah, just note that post 486, depending on proration, JD instant air dash is going to be more damage, but doesn't always work. Sometimes you have to do just run up 5k and dash cancel. And then super during the dash cancel to get the splat. So bear that in mind. Those are very important to implement as well. You know, those 2H pickups, especially off far wall bounces. Now another spot I see Goldlewis has missed a ton of damage on pretty often is counter hit 2D, because this is actually like a very good starter for us. And 2K 2D is a natural frame trap, 1 frame gap if I'm not mistaken. So it pops up from time to time. And just, you know, I don't want to see this. I don't want to see it. I want to see that. That's what I want to see, fellas. Okay? Again, the difference is astronomical between optimal and suboptimal in some cases with Goldlewis. Yeah, going back to my previous point about 2H, just note you can't always do this. If it's too heavily prorated, you can't do that. Hence why I went for the other route there. So you can see 2H OTGing there. Not working. Let's talk about some more advanced mix-ups now. I just want to throw some things in. So I would say that you definitely want to implement like the 2P whiff mix-up on the opponent's Oki. You know, this is very good, but what's even better is the runnings. It's the same thing except from a dash, and that's a little bit more ambiguous because you can run up 268, you can run up throw, you can just run up close slash meaty outside of throw range. It's actually quite annoying for the opponent to deal with, and not only that, you can use the runnings to do these BTs anywhere near pressure, or where you wouldn't normally be able to. So again, I have a separate video explaining all that. Highly recommend checking it out. On that note, again, separate video on this, but ERC mix-ups, these are very strong. This is a gapless, you know, high-low, essentially, that gives a full combo on hit. 248 doesn't normally give a full combo, but on blue RC, of course it does. Let's put together what we learned earlier. Look at that. Got the 2H wall bounce. If we do the 2H pickup, tons of damage, much more consistent. Make sure you know when and where to do these 2H pickups. They're very, very good. Now another mix-up we can go for here is going to be the 862 instead of the 842, but you have to be fast on this. Make sure that you're getting the 862 out as fast as possible, actually, after your slow blue RC. And the trick here is actually to get your blue RC as fast as possible from the close slash. That's how you get this to be gapless. Once you get that, you can go for a fuzzy here. Now, in this case, if they're FDing beforehand, you oftentimes don't have time to do the fuzzy route I did before. In that case, unfortunately, like JK, JD, hit confirm 684 is like your best option. Kind of sucks, or you can land and maybe sometimes far slash 684, or just land 684. That'll work, but it's kind of mid. But this is a strong mix-up. And yeah, because they're blue RC, 862 will give you a full combo, or it wouldn't normally. So pretty good stuff there, you know, and they're gapless. So can't be reversal, can't be backdash, can't be mashed on, etc. Very good mix-up. Yeah, you add that stuff into your arsenal, you add the runnings into your arsenal properly so you can do a running mix-up off of this instead of just slow RC forward or fast RC every time. Now, this is a lot harder to block and react to than this. A lot harder. Let's also talk post-throw pressure. So mid-screen, you can actually go for a pretty gross mix-up safe jump. Let me show it. As you can see, that is basically an auto time setup to get our back turn. So it's with JP, air dash JH, 862, 842 back turn. You have to time it properly, so play around with that. But even if you mess up half the time, you have a true 50-50 mix up there. However, getting this to actually safe jump is really hard. Like blocking between back turn BT and the JH, very difficult. You're basically just gonna, if you're gonna go for that, you're assuming the opponent is gonna respect the safe jump itself, and not just try to DP. Most of the time they will, because they get crossed up. So like, if they see this, they assume, you're going to be same side. So their DP input gets messed up. And so they can't just like immediately input it as soon as you land again. Some people can backdash that though, and that messes this up. You need the JH to hit on block to get the buffer for your 862, 842 back turn. Otherwise you can't do anything. And that kind of sucks. But yeah. And of course you can go for memes if you want, but this stuff is really unsafe. It is kind of hard to block though, and kind of hard to see. So, it's worth having in your bag of tricks for sure. Now let's talk another better fuzzy, the best fuzzy actually, because it is a genuine 50-50 with the same timing if you do it right. All these other fuzzies are kind of fuzzy blockable or reactable. This one is definitely not. The way you do it is you do close slash jump cancel. You want to get it low to the ground and then JK. And from there you threaten either run up 2K or run up JK. On 2K hit, you do close slash 268. It will combo on blue RC if you do it fast enough. And then on air hit, you just do the normal fuzzy route JK, JD, close slash, JH, JD, 684. This is an excellent fuzzy and a true 50-50. If you want to get a 50-50 to close out the game on mix-up, this is the one to do it with. That's the one to do it with, okay? The other ones are all, not as optimal. This is about optimizing Goldlewis. Something else you want to practice is doing Goldlewis's safe jab properly. So his 2P is a safe jab. In other words, what that means is you can media with it, and you can also block TPs and reversals at the same time. It's very hard because it only has 3 active frames though. But it's very much worth practicing. Because having a plus light normal in this game is very rare, and we can actually take advantage of that. And if you do this completely meaty, you can link into a close slash, and that's excellent. On no FD, actually close slash will work pretty much all the time as long as you meted with it. But meeting this properly is really hard. Okay, the way you practice it is you set the opponent's wake up to throw or their fastest DP, and you have it randomized between those, and keep practicing until you're hitting the throw consistently and not getting hit by the DP. That's how you do this. That's how you practice it. But it's very important because our safe jumps are reactable. You can backdash Goldlewis. Against many characters, we can punish backdash if they on react backdash your safe jump. But against others, we're kind of SOL like Bridget. So knowing how to safe jab is critical. Also, it's quite a mix-up. Like if you're running up to the opponent, oftentimes to them, that's a sign you're either going to throw or it's time for them to DP. Like those are usually their 2 thoughts when that happens. Safe jab beats both of those. So excellent, excellent stuff. So I also want to talk about meter usage and meter efficiency here for a second. Lately, I've been a big fan of Fast RC because Fast RC, if you didn't know, has a much lower meter generation penalty timer than other versions of RC, right? All versions of RC have different timers basically from when you use them to when you start generating meter again at a normal pace. And things like Fast Blue RC are very, very good for this. Because basically you can go for these mix-ups. Let me give you an example. Right, you get a fuzzy overhead there even if they block the 862. And basically if that mix-up hits, because we have such a long turn, we have such good Oki, by the time the opponents back up off their feet again and you've done your turn, you basically will have neutralized the cost of that mix-up. Now just one note about this particular mix-up. It's really, really hard to do this completely properly because you can actually get a close slash pickup off this 862 on hit. but you have to be really, really fast to do this. Like you have to, I'm pretty sure, I haven't done the exact math on this, pretty sure you have, you know, between 1 and 3 frames to actually input all of this. You know, this whole setup. Now you don't have to do a raw here because you have the dash cancel RC to help you. But what I mean is like to get your RC timing. Like you want to get the earliest possible blue RC timing, and that's kind of hard to do without a red RC. Now another benefit of this fast blue RC mix-up, normally 842 and 862, they all have gaps. You know, there's always going to be a gap in here, and that's actually a detriment in many situations. Blue RC removes that gap and actually makes you even more plus, and gives you combos where you couldn't. You know, this kind of thing, you actually still get a combo. You get the full combo that you do just like with the slow version. See? So that's really good. Now I would say we also want to know when we can checkmate the opponent. So this situation pops up kind of often. The opponent will YRC you in the corner, like during Oki or something like that. And YRC places an enormous meter penalty on the opponent. Absolutely enormous. It takes him a really long time to be able to start generating meter again. And you can on react burst YRC. It is guaranteed to hit. So they'll use all their meter, they'll put themselves in a situation where they can't FD anymore, can't generate meter. And what you do is you burst them into the corner, and then you get Goldlewis gaming, baby. You have to use the drone resets to do this effectively. Let me show you what we can get though. So let's assume we have a modest 60 tension to start here. Now that string is all frame traps, not greedy, no fake resets in there. That's like the bare minimum you can get in terms of being greedy. And look how much chip damage we did to him while taking basically no risks to ourselves. Goes without saying, if he gets hit at any point during that, he's completely screwed. Like he's gonna die there because a lot of risk is getting built. And of course, make sure you're keeping in mind the combo optimization stuff that we went over earlier. It's very important to do that so you can cash out on damage as much as possible. But I mean, even if you don't and you get a splat with like one hit, if you have meter for super, which a lot of the time you will if you're doing this fast RC kind of thing, you're going to be able to just cash out that way. And it's a ton of damage because low proration plus R super is like the best combo. Obviously, we have this mix-up mid-screen. Yeah, there's a lot we can do there. You can OTG them into the drone. Generally, like drone resets are really, really good if you have the resources and the opponent doesn't have resources to stop you. That's when you want to look for these. And you know, as I showed, we get a shit ton of damage off of this. So even if the opponent has a bit of meter to start with, like you can actually checkmate the opponent much more often than I see Goldlewis is doing. And that's actually a huge thing because like a good opponent, the difference between checkmating them and letting them block pressure, it can easily lose you a game, especially in hard matchups. So that's something that we really need to be aware of. And in general, I'm really just a big fan of meter efficiency. Like doing fast RC combos whenever you can is just a lot better. You know, we can do this kind of thing, for example, off the normal 684 hit confirm, and then you're in there and you're generating meter at a normal pace again, as opposed to just doing like a slow RC combo. And that meter efficiency that you get there really helps. Like a lot of the time you can get a super where you wouldn't normally be able to. You know, fast RC conversions are really, really good. Basically, anytime you can do one without sacrificing too much damage, unless you're just guaranteed to win and it's easier, you're less likely to drop. I would say go for it. You know, keeping in mind how to combo with Goldlewis once you have your routing down consistently. That's why I left it for a higher rung. Like meter efficiency is a really complex thing. You know, knowing when to do it, knowing when to burn meter on mix-ups. You know, it heavily depends on matchup, on player even. Like, it's definitely not correct every time that you land a 684, you go for your mix-up in the corner. Or, you know, knowing how much exact, you know, BTs you need the opponent to block before you generate a meter safely. You know, factoring in how much you get from a throw to influence your decision-making. All of this is very high-level stuff. that you really need to be thinking about if you want to beat the best opponents in the world. Okay, that would be my advice. Now, the absolute apex of Goldlewis gaming, not just because I unlocked the ability recently, but because I genuinely believe it, is doing raw 862 and raw 842 consistently. This is really, really hard. It heavily depends on your controller, but if we're talking about optimization, I have to throw it in there. This is absolutely part of the optimal Goldlewis game plan, is doing raw 862 and raw 842, particularly on meaty, and also to anti-air, because, you know, using 842 and 862 to anti-air, if you can do it on reaction, they reach really high. Sometimes you can even do like the jumping version and still get a lot of reward off this against characters like Chip and Milia. But yeah, it's a disgusting mix-up if you can run up to the opponent and high-low them, where the least you'll be is plus 12 afterward. I don't need to explain why that's extremely powerful. I would just say that, you know, if you're a really good Goldlewis, then you should investigate this. You know, that would be my advice with the Raws. I think they're excellent. I think they're the future for sure. They can be made consistent, I promise. And yeah, I mean, even if you're not 100% consistent on one side, you can just use the running to get the buffer on the other side. And then even, you know, the running itself gets like an extra layer mix up that way. Raws are the future, okay? I had to say it. Anyway, that's everything for me for this one. I'm cooking up an Axel matchup guide soon. I should be done with that in the relatively near future. It's pretty comprehensive. But yeah, if you guys enjoyed this, you can check out my Twitch, linked in the description. Otherwise, subscribe for more Goldlewis gaming. I will be at Combo Breaker, and I'll be representing the Goldlewis Nation. That's all. Goodbye.